What's up, guys? Let's talk Lua. Howdy hey today! Okay, so in the last episode, I was talking about the sleep function. And I was asking you, why does the sleep function have that N tucked in between two parentheses? And you all identified that the N represented the number of seconds that you wanted the sleep function to pause the code. So far, I have introduced to you, you have practiced writing a function strictly that does something inside of it. But this here is something new. Now we are actually passing something into the sleep function that it can use to make a decision. That changes the way that the code inside of that function gets run. This is different than, for instance, the random function, which basically you don't give it anything. It just does a bunch of math inside and returns a random number. However, of course, with the sleep function, we need to tell it how long to sleep for. And so what I want to do today is I'll briefly explain passing in variables into functions, but also I want to show you what the sleep function is doing. Okay, so let's start by talking about functions and how you can use them, how you can pass a variable in. What I've done here is I've opened up a new Notepad++, and I need to save as, and I don't know, this should be funkin, kind of cool, .lua, and so I'm starting out by defining a function. Now, in order to define a function, you write function, and that tells the Lua interpreter that a function is next. And I'm going to call it func, and then parentheses, and then end. I go ahead and type end so that I don't forget. Now, you should have saved your file as a .lua, and so you'll be getting all this highlighting. If you don't get the highlighting, be sure to just check your .lua. All right, so now this function, it is simply being defined here. It is being, the computer will read it and understand what the function does. It'll put it into memory. It will not execute the function. That has to happen outside of the function. And we do that by saying func. And we write out the name of the function with its parentheses. That is how the function is run. Now, of course, you can write all kinds of other lines of code over here, right? So a bunch of stuff. Typically, that's what will happen. In our case, we are just going to write func for purposes of for just demonstrating this. Now, like I said, we wanted to pass something into func, and first of all, you'd be starting, I suppose, if you follow the thought process, you'd be writing something in func. For instance, let's just put a number inside func, which will affect what func does, I suppose. And so we're passing in a number. So up here in func, we have to actually give whatever is passed into the function a variable name, because we need to be able to reference it. We need to be able to reference what has been passed in. This hopefully will start to make sense over time. For now, just understand that you have to give it a name, and it goes in the same place as you put the 6. So in this case, I'm just gonna put an N for number, and now inside of the function we are able to do something with whatever's been passed in, and we can do something with it because it has the variable name n. All right, so I'm just going to return n and make it really simple to highlight the fact that this is not a useful script. It's simply for demonstrating inputting something into a function. So we're just going to return n, and if we run this code, nothing will be put out on the screen because we haven't written a print function or something. So let's go ahead and print, we'll just print func. And we save it, and I'm going to go up to File, Open Containing Folder, CMD, and now I'm in the appropriate folder to run my code. And my code is func in.lua func-in. And so basically all that it does is it prints 6, and if I change this to 7, it really doesn't matter. It will print whatever is passed in. Because if you follow the line of logic, it reads the function, it understands the function, it puts it into memory. It then comes down to print, and print calls that function. So it says, hey, function, run this, and use a 7. The 7 gets, or n takes on the value of 7 in this particular case. And then it executes some code. In this case, it's simply returning n, which we know to have a value of 7. We could, of course, also say n equals n times 2. And what that will do is it will go ahead and multiply n by 2 and then reassign and then give it a new value. So if we do this and run the code, then you can see that indeed it is doing something with n, and highlighted in the fact that when we pass in a 7, it spit out a 14. So pretty simple sort of thing. But I just wanted to show you that is what is going on, and that is how you pass in a variable. Quick overview: you've defined your function, you've given that variable a name that you can reference, and then in your code you call that function. And at the same time passing in some sort of variable. Okay, so let's take a look real quick at the sleep function and what it does. So first of all, let's see, where is it getting called? Right here. So it's actually getting called in here, and the CLS function. And we pass in an S. And you can follow the trail all the way back. So in this case, you can see that, well, the question is, what is S? Well, S is defined right here in CLS S. So where are we calling CLS? And it turns out here we are calling CLS, and in this case, it's a 0. In this case, it's 3. So in the case that it's a 0, CLS gets a 0, or S becomes 0. Therefore, sleep is given S, and S is 0, if you can follow. And then n therefore becomes 0. All right, so in here we have a local variable defined, which I don't think it has to be called local. At any rate, T0 is given the time at that instance. At the very moment that the function is run, it gets T0 or time 0, gets some sort of time in seconds. And then it comes down here and it starts what's called a while loop, interestingly. I'm going to talk about this in the next episode, go into more detail of a while loop. But basically, this will stay here. It will say, while this condition is true, stay here, don't go anywhere. And so basically, what this is saying is the current clock time minus that initial time, by subtracting those, right? If you subtract those, that number is going to slowly get larger and larger as time goes on, and you get farther and farther away from that initial time. And so that number is going to get bigger and bigger. It's going to start out small, so it's going to be less than n, which is defined here less than n. It's going to get bigger and bigger until it surpasses n, and in which case this becomes false and the while loop stops and lets the code move on to the next execution. Okay, guys, that is way more talking than you want to hear from me. So I want you to write one function that you pass in a number, and if the number is above 10, then it prints, or it returns, I should say, greater, like the word greater. And if the value of the number you pass in is lower than 10, it returns the word lower. And basically then you want to go ahead and print that, the word greater or lower. So you're going to be dealing with, you're going to need to define a function with an if statement inside with two returns, one that returns greater, one that returns lower. So that'll be your function. And then you're going to need to call your function by passing it a number. So you're going to give it a number and it'll run. So that is the exercise for today. I will catch you next time.